Okay, so I am in my photo mode right here. So just as a reminder, when you're in build mode, you are out in the model and navigating everything here. You can place objects and change materials. When you get to the photo mode, you see this little preview window and you can go to your saved views. So in this mode, let's just say this is going to be my view. I have set the materiality, so I have some grass material. I've set the sandbox here to a sand material, and I've allocated a wood material to these upright elements. And let's say now I want to populate it with different trees and some more planting and some people. So let's talk about objects in Lumion. We'll go back to our build mode, and remember how we made a layer for our Rhino model to be on? We're going to now set some of these other layers to different topics. So if you click on the layer name, I'm going to change this one to trees. I'm going to go onto this layer and name this one vegetation. I'm going to call this one people, and this one site furnishing. And we're going to begin working within these layers to place objects within the model. So the trees that we have that were imported originally from SketchUp and then into Rhino, they're not super great, and not loving them. They're also not following the camera around, so it would be a real hassle to have to change them and orient them to the camera in Rhino every time that we want to render a view. So we're just going to replace these with Lumion trees. And Lumion has a really, really good content library. So if you go here to the little content library panel and go over to nature, then you go to place, they will bring up the nature library. And within that, we have a whole bunch of subcategories. We have broadleaf species, conifers, palms, leafless trees, and winter trees, grasses, plants, flowers, cactuses, clusters, leaves, forest wood, rocks, and weeds. Some of these are new in Lumion 11.5, but the broadleaf and conifers and all of the top stuff has been there for a long time. So within this, we have now subpages and subpages of different models. What I found in Lumion is that most species are known as their common name. So if you're looking for a plant, look up like a maple, for example. Is going to bring up everything that has maple in the title, and you can see if you highlight it, it tells you what the species is. So this is big leaf maple, and usually Lumion has a couple different versions of a tree, so it'll have like a younger version and a more mature version, and sometimes a couple intermediate versions, and you can always tell what scale the tree is because there's a little scale person standing next to the object. So that's really helpful so that you know exactly what size you're proposing. So that applies to basically any species that you want, or if you don't know the species and you just want to go through and look at the nature library, you can exit the search, go back to these categories, and just begin taking a look through all of the pages. So you can look through the grasses, you can test out a couple. So to place an object, you can just select it and it will automatically hit the surface of where it is. So some of them are more detailed than others, and some of them are less detailed than others. And you're going to just get to know the library as you work with it. So you can place objects on the surfaces as you want. And then to manipulate them, you're going to use either the select tool, which will allow you to either move free, which will be, you can move it around and it will automatically go down to whatever surface it is on. So you can see it's kind of gripping onto the surface of the tree trunk right now. You can also choose to just move it up or down like this. And if you want to return it to the surface, you can just put it back on free move, or you can move it horizontally. You can also rotate things just like this, or scale them up and down. Now, if you want to select multiple objects, there's a few ways to do it. So once you are on an object, you'll see this panel up here tells you more details about it. Currently, I have all of this stuff on the trees layer, but what if I want to move it to the vegetation layer? I can click out on this little arrow and go select all objects in the same category, which means it would take all of the plantings that I currently have. And now I can just drop them into the vegetation layer here. Another thing that you could do, and you can use deselect down here to deselect your models, is to select something here and then go select identical objects. And that's going to select every instance of the same model. So if I have multiple models of this grass here, and I want to select all of them, I can select one, go select identical, and then I can manipulate them together as a group. So I can randomize the rotation, randomize their size, reset them, randomize their position. There's a whole bunch of things I can do. It's probably best to not get too caught up in this. I just wanted to show you that there are ways to select things in Lumion if you want to move them as a group, or if you want to select them and do something else with them. One thing that we can do is when we have all of the objects of one type selected, we can use this replace selection to choose another species. So what if we wanted to change this to this other type of grass? We could just use the replace object command, and we can select another species and it will get replaced. If we wanted to just replace one of them, we would only select one and then change it out for something else. Always click the check mark to save your changes. So if you want to delete objects, you go to the little garbage can here and then click on them. If you want to select multiple objects at the same time, you will make sure you're on the selection arrow, and I would just make sure you're on free move, and then hold down Control and drag a window, and it's going to select every object within that window. Now, if you wanted to, you could delete all of these at the same time. Let's go into our trees and select a couple trees. So I know that in this previous golf course, there's a lot of Norway maple. So I'm going to select some fairly mature species, and then I'm going to go kind of in the background here for one of the views that I have. It's up on this hill, and I'm going to begin placing some trees according to the locations that I have from these billboards from Rhino. So I'm just going to place them on the surface, pretty much in the same spot as these placeholder trees. And then on the selection tool, I'm going to select one, go select all identical objects, and I'll use the scale command to scale them up. So they're hitting kind of around the right size as these billboard objects that we have in our model. I like to try to diversify the types of trees I'm using, even if it's within the same species. So I might go into this other large Norway maple and pop a few of those in. And remember, you only want to populate the areas that are going to be visible in your view. So if you are taking a view from down here at this pavilion, looking this direction, then you would only populate the trees that would be in this view. You don't really need the trees that are outside of the view unless they're going to be casting shadows over your view, and those are necessary for you. So for example, I might populate some of these just because even though they're not in my view, they would be casting shadows over, over my ground plane. So just be really strategic. You don't want to waste your energy, your computer energy or your physical energy on populating the model if you really don't have to. I'm going to just keep going and populating some of these trees here, here, here. Now, Lumion automatically randomizes the rotation and the scale of elements as you place them, so that if you're placing them on the model, they should already kind of look a little bit more naturalistic. But remember, you can always use your selection tools to either select all objects in the same category, which would select every tree that I had just populated, or if you deselect everything and then select only identical objects, it will only grab the ones that are the exact same species of and object that you placed. So again, you could randomize the size, randomize the rotation, or you can control that yourself and scale things as a group, up and down, or individually. So placing objects is kind of the fun part of Lumion. It does take some time, especially when you're working on a really large model like this. So try to be strategic about what you're putting in. Now these species are not really specified in the project, so you're free to choose whatever you want, and you don't need to stick to the same size either. So for example, if I'm going to work on this playground view that I have, I think I'd probably want to select some really nice foreground trees for my framing. So I'm going to go to place, make sure I'm on nature, and then maybe I'll select something like a linden tree like this. And another linden over here. And you're probably thinking like, well, okay, that's nice, but like, what about those trees that were coming in from Rhino? When you're done placing all your objects and you want to get rid of those reference trees, you'll go into your Rhino model, you'll go into SketchUp, turn off the tree layer, and then you're just going to export the whole thing again as a model. So grab everything, go File, Export with Origin, snap onto your base point, and you're just going to save over your old file and update it in Lumion, and it'll come in again without trees. So let's do that right now. I'm going to keep placing trees, and then once I'm ready, I can replace the base model with the revised version, and it will update without the billboard trees. If you have trees in the really far distance that you want to place, there is tree clusters in Lumion, and these are like lower quality clusters that you can kind of place in the background. So there's pine, there's canopy, there's broadleaf. I usually use something that's relatively appropriate to the context. So I might take a big square like this and just place it off in the distance. Like if I want to have trees all the way in the back of my view, then I'll place a couple of these clusters around like that. And then if I go back to my view down here, you can see that that canopy is visible beyond. So I don't have to place each tree individually beyond these hills. It's enough for me to just place those cluster elements in the background. And if I want it to kind of raise up above that hill, I would just select the trees, go move up, and move it up so I can just see it up above that horizon. So maybe I want to lift it up a little bit like that. And this one too. There. So now I have like a visible background tree canopy. It doesn't cost a ton of memory because it's not a highly detailed model. So remember to model strategically, save your foreground elements as your high quality elements, and anything that you can get by with as being either a billboard or a lower quality version of something, then do that, because it really will help you. If you have a beast of a computer, then it's not so important to do it this way. But if you are struggling as it is with navigating around Lumion, you'll probably want to just make sure you're optimizing your memory as much as you can and only putting in really highly detailed models to the foreground where it's going to make a difference for you.